Well, we've covered a lot of ground. Let's take a quick temperature of the audience here. Any questions? I mean, we've really broached a lot of. Go ahead and TA.
Yeah. Are you finding also that when a user basically acquires their own device, they sort of emotionally connect to the fact that it's theirs, and therefore they need to support it, as opposed to when someone gives them the device, it's just it's a strange emotional connection, as well as the fact that in many cases it's easier for them to figure out. Have you found that as well?
Yeah, I would say they certainly, you're right, it is an emotional connection, and as a result, that's probably one of the reasons they're less interested in going to IT, to suddenly find their device got wiped and all their personal photos got wiped too. And the fact that kind of they put their own hard-earned dollars into it does tend to be, they see it as it's their device. It's a bit like with phone numbers. It used to be you got the number allocated to you when you got your cell phone from your company, and now it's like, well, no, maybe I originally got that phone number with a corporate issued device, but I want to take the phone number with me. It's my phone number. So yes, I think we are seeing a lot of that dynamic. We're also seeing they don't want multiple devices. So you'll sometimes see people say, yeah, well, this is my work device, but it's this clunky thing that I don't like to use, but here's my cool personal one. They don't want to carry two. So yes, they do have that emotional attachment to that one device.
There's an implication of that, though, for IT that is very complicated, which is privacy. And what does that imply for the privacy policy that I need to set up within IT? And what is really the social contract that I've got with the user, which is very unclear in most organizations, right? Because I have a different expectation if it's my device versus if it's a corporate issued device. And IT policy has to be able to match that without compromising security.
I'm just wondering where the responsibility for data security lies. Is that in the infrastructure? Is that in the application? Does the IT department provide that?
Where's the responsibility for data security? And certainly Roger Hale from Brocade's going to be coming up towards the end of the day, and he'll opine on that. But in the interim,
I'd say the answer is yes, right? Because I mean, it's very difficult to say it all resides with this part of the infrastructure or this part of the infrastructure, right? So just because it's mobile, you don't throw away a lot of the good things that IT has always done. So you don't take, most IT security organizations have pretty elaborate policies which define, data classification, the appropriate, countermeasures that are mandatory, optional, et cetera, et cetera. So you just have to essentially leverage that and figure out, okay, so if I have an SFA application that's running on my, BlackBerry or iPhone or what have you, right? I need to look at, okay, so what kind of data am I storing locally? What's in transit over the air, right? Let me look at what the CSO has defined as, is that any of that private confidential information? If it is, what are the appropriate safeguards? Now let me think about, okay, do I need to encrypt everything that's at rest? If I do that, is it going to kill the usability of the app, right? So then it starts becoming a trade-off. So it doesn't necessarily mean that, it's exclusively within the app or, within the OS, et cetera. So it's more of a dialogue. I mean, you just take traditional security approaches that you have on a non-mobile side, and you make some trade-offs. Usability versus, do I really need to put in all this, the heavy hand of security that comes in? Now, specific industries, financial services, healthcare, et cetera, have much more stringent requirements. So I think the answer may be slightly different, but I'd say it's kind of all across.
And what's interesting, though, is the comment that Vishy just made on usability, because user experience is the most fundamental thing in mobile. So first, after I go through my data protection classification, what data should be protected, how, if I just said, that requires these 10 security measures on the device, well, great, I'll spend $300,000 building the app and not a single user will ever use it. And so UX becomes critical. And I think the other thing that's really key is every organization has some kind of trust policy, and it's generally been based on who is the user and what data do they have access to. But with mobile, because the endpoint can fall out of compliance, I could jailbreak a phone, or I could root a phone, I could have a bad app on it, I could be out of policy. My ability to get local data on the device as a user should be constrained by who I am as a user, what data I have access to, and also how secure my device is. So if I'm the CFO on a device whose OS integrity has been compromised, I shouldn't be able to get any data on that device. And so it adds a little bit of complexity around how I manage data protection.
And just to kind of, another kind of wrinkle to that is, we've been focused exclusively on internal facing apps, right? So if you're a bank and you have a mobile banking app, now think about what kind of infrastructure the bank needs to put in place for the tens of millions of their customers using a mobile banking application, right? Because there's, you have an implicit assumption when you do online banking, you see the HTTPS, blah, 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 et cetera, you assume some security. Now, so think about it from an infrastructure perspective, what the bank now has to do. Or if you're a consumer goods company, whatever, you have a branded app on the App Store, and if it's storing some data locally, what kind of security infrastructure do you put in place, right?
So talking about those services, Vishy, you spoke about a mobile commerce or a business to consumer. We've been very inwardly focused on this panel from the standpoint of IT. But when it comes to budget, a lot of the lines of business budgets I'm really seeing with the VP of Interactive and the marketing department for B2C. So Vishy, what kinds of services are you seeing that are initially adopted to support an app that's B2C, but that's something that also could be used business to employee and business to business?
I'd say kind of generally looking at, so just take mobile banking, right? So mobile banking 5 years ago was the greatest thing, right? But now it's passé, right? Even your local neighborhood credit union has a mobile banking app. So essentially what's happened is that what used to be completely disparate, there used to be basic text alerts. Overdraft, okay, you'd get a text alert, right? Paycheck got deposited, you got a text alert. So there was very kind of low kind of grade, just SMS text-based banking. Then you went to full-fledged native apps, BFA, Citi, Chase, et cetera, et cetera. Then USAA came along and upped the ante and said, okay, you can do your, a remote check deposit, right, using the camera on your phone, right? So all of these capabilities have kind of forced a lot of these IT organizations, and I'm talking specifically around kind of large banks and even small credit unions, to step back and take a look at, okay, I need to service these customers using text messaging. These customers are going to come in through a browser, and these customers are going to come in through a native app, right? So regardless of that, I need some common infrastructure, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm still going back to the same customer information systems. I'm still using the same authentication infrastructure, the fraud management infrastructure that the bank has. So I think what it does is, from an infrastructure perspective, pushes some of the discussion to, development tools, runtime environments, et cetera, et cetera. How do you put in a web services infrastructure that is mobile friendly? Right? So if you're a large airline, right, so you go to AA.com, United.com, I search for, flights between JFK and San Francisco. On my desktop, I can have 20 pages, right, and 20 per screen, right, of flights. On a mobile, different set of experiences going back to UX. So how do I optimize my web services infrastructure to be much more mobile friendly? So the discussion starts kind of going around that.
Mm-hmm. One more question I saw in the blue shirt there. Yes, go ahead.
Along the lines of what you just asked, could you name the top 3 enterprise applications that are moving to mobile devices, beyond email, of course?
So the top 3 mobile enterprises, or the top 3
Enterprise
applications
apps.
within enterprises?
Enterprises. What are the top 3 applications that users are able to migrate to using on the mobile devices? Beyond email, what they actually use?
I think that actually is indicative of the problem. There isn't a top 3. There are so many out there. There are so many industries, and there are so many different, apps that appeal to different users. If it was as simple as a top 3, then
What about the top 3 categories? I'm not asking about the number or something. Just what are the top 3 categories?
So maybe I'll answer it this way, right? So when we work with our customers, we tell them, look for 4 things, right? So mobility can help in one of 4 ways. One, you look at any time there's a workflow, right? 6 or 7 steps in a workflow. And the actors in the workflow are not sitting behind their desks. So think about expense approvals, right? So no manager is sitting behind his desk waiting for, okay, I'm waiting for John or Bob or just to submit an expense approval so I can hit yes, approve or reject, right? So think about all of those workflows in your organization, whether it's inspection workflows for your field service people, whether it's expense approvals, IT change management. I was in a discussion last week with the Fortune 50 financial services conglomerate, right? So they have of the order of 10,000 IT change requests every day across the world, right? For patches, for upgrades, for backups, restores, et cetera. And the people who have to act on them are not sitting behind their desk. So is there business value in mobilizing those workflows? So that's kind of one category. That's the other is knowledge enhancers, right? So if you're a salesperson, working for a pharma company and you're about to go in to meet a physician, and you want to kind of get up to speed quickly from a competitive perspective, does my nearest competitor have an upcoming clinical trial that's run into some issues with the FDA, right? I want to catch up on that. I don't have time to, whip up my laptop, boot it, 3G air card, VPN, 15 screens later, I get that one piece of information. can I get that on my mobile device, right? So whether it's simple things like extending stuff like SharePoint, whatever, right? So that's kind of the second category. The third is transaction enhancers, right? So you look at, the classic example is the rental car return at an airport, right? So you return your car, the associate comes out, scans the barcode at the back of your car, boom, out pops the receipt, right? A proof of delivery kind of application, you know, the courier company shows up, they drop in the package from Amazon, right? You sign for it, and you know, you get a transaction enhancer. Either a receipt gets printed out or an acknowledgement of the transaction. So that's kind of a third category. And the fourth is reporting enhancers, right? So organizations have invested millions, if not tens of millions of dollars in pretty elaborate business intelligence and analytics infrastructure, whether it's Cognos, Business Objects, Hyperion, I don't care, right? But traditionally that model is I go to that piece of infrastructure to get the data that I need. Or some poor analyst somewhere in finance or operations slaves over creating an Excel spreadsheet, you know, 16 worksheets, right? And then each one of you just needs, you know, cells, you know, E56 through E60. That's all you need, right? So isn't there a better way to rethink how you look at analytics, right? So, you know, go on the App Store, look at Roam BI or MicroStrategy. Pretty amazing visualization of, you know, analytics information. So those are the four kind of filters I would look at in terms of, you know, what applies to you, because every business is different.
Yeah, that's a nice segue to the next panel, actually, which is Sean Whiteley from Salesforce.com is going to be talking about the next big horizontal application that cuts across all these verticals. But bottom line, there's a long tail to TA's comments when he walked through all these single-purpose applications. Discovery becomes a big issue on that front. What's the one takeaway here in a sentence you'd leave the audience?
I think the one takeaway is, as crazy as 2010 was, I think 2011 for enterprise is going to be even crazier. The complexity is going to increase. And so at the CIO level, the core mindset has to be, how do I handle the complexity of mobile in my organization and actually, you know, deliver the potential value that it has.
I think what I would add to that is, you know, don't fight the tide. There are new technologies and there's new, you know, embrace the technologies, embrace the change, because it really will make life easier for IT, but also far more productive for the users.
I think my kind of parting thought is to expand your notion of infrastructure to include business to consumer apps, right? So whether it's how do you embed, you know, QR code readers into your apps, right? Proximity marketing, et cetera, et cetera. Think about how even that constitutes infrastructure, right? So not just the traditional internal facing apps as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.